It's just for fun, so we can wait. This chapter is just for fun.
Yeah.
In this book, the chapter names are very interesting. Have you realized this?
Yeah, because Psalm last time was simple Psalms and stuff
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
Very interesting chapters. I mean, the name makes you wonder what the hell.
Yeah,
I found this very interesting craft in this author. In all his books, his chapter names are absolutely beautiful.
Mm.
Even the lives of trees, you remember, he talks about street kids sometimes. He just gives you such names that you wonder how they get connected with that particular living element.
Yeah. So the last time Diba was saying that she wanted, one of the children wanted to present something. So I was just wondering whether they want to be joining and they want to do that
I
today
don't
or
think we have a confirmation. Manisha, do you have a
No, sir, she didn't confirm.
confirmation?
okay, then without much ado, then welcome everybody. And over to you, Sandeep. We're going to read Inner Life of Animals first today.
Yeah,
So over to
thank
you.
you. Yuji, before I read, I had a little conversation with Brinda. We're talking about animals. Brinda has a very interesting person who makes nature videos about animals. So a young girl who shoots this, I saw her profile the other day. So Brinda will introduce you and she'll be a wonderful person to join on meet and greet. She makes
Yeah,
films on animals and it's very fascinating because animal photography and animal filming is very different from normal filming. So
yeah,
maybe in April meet and greet you can connect with Brinda. I asked her to check with you because you can check
yeah,
and
yeah.
I
Yeah,
just
that'll
found
be
it
good.
fascinating. I saw a profile of the director. She makes films.
No,
So
no, that'd be very nice. In
and she
fact,
really volunteered. She told Brinda that she'd be happy to come to my good school on a Sunday morning and share how to make films with wildlife and this thing. So please take this ahead.
yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah. Thank you. Just for fun, we are reading The Inner Life of Animals. As we go along this book, we have a few chapters left, and we will continue with the work and life of Peter Wohlleben. There's another new book on nature by Peter, so we will read that. So today we are reading this book. We still have some time to go with the book. And the beautiful part is after this book, another interesting new book is starting, which was to start first, but I requested Jugjeet sir to read first, please. Just for fun. Are animals capable of having fun? That is to say, are they capable of doing things that have no particular purpose other than them pleasure and happiness? We all want to have fun. So let's see now what the animals what is their meaning of fun? I think that's an important question because the answer helps us to decide whether animals experience positive feelings only when they perform tasks that promote the survival of the species, such as pleasure during sex, which creates offspring. If that were the case, then pleasure and happiness would be byproducts of purely instinctive programming that ensure certain behaviors are engaged in and rewarded. In contrast, just by remembering happy experiences, humans can relive the emotions that went with them and enjoy them over and over again. We all want happy experiences, so today we are exploring how animals have happy experiences. Free time, fun belongs here, just as a holiday by the sea or winter sports in the mountains. Might this be the crowning glory that sets us apart from animals? But then those tobogganing crows come to mind. Very interesting. Tobogganing crows. I like this word. Let's see what the tobogganing crows are. An internet video shows one of these birds sliding down the roof of a house. The crow has found a lid from a plastic container. It carries it up to the highest part of the roof, places it on the slope, and then jumps onto it to slide down. So that's a tobogganing crow. So tobogganing is actually sliding down a slope. No sooner does the bird reach the bottom, then it goes back up for the next ride. apparent point, apparently none. The fun factor, probably the same as when we jump onto the wooden or plastic object of our choice and careen down a hill in the snow. Why would crows expend energy on such a pointless activity? After all, tough evolutionary competition calls for the elimination of all non-beneficial activities and ejects from the race any animal that is not sufficiently rigorous in this respect. And yet, it's been a long time since we have paid any attention to this seemingly absolute rule. At least in wealthier countries, we have energy to spare and we can afford to use it to enjoy ourselves. Why should it be any different for an intelligent bird that has set aside sufficient food for the winter and can devote some of those calories to fun and games? Clearly, crows too can convert surplus resources into mindless fun and conjure up happy feelings whenever they want. Has anyone seen an animal having fun just for the heck of it? See, because when you talk of animal life, you always think of struggle. You always think of they're always spending for food. They're always protecting themselves. They're always fighting. Yes, Manju, you can unmute. Can you unmute Manju, please? Manisha? Manju has raised a hand.
She can unmute herself, sir.
Okay. Manju, please unmute yourself and share this experience where you really seen some animal having fun. Yeah, we can hear you.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes,
Sir, can I ask one question?
please.
Can
Why did you write your question in the chat box? That may be a good idea because you're not audible. Please write your question in the chat box. Ma'am, you can please mute her. Let the question come in the chat box because the voice is not clear. And I suggest if you have a question, please write in the chat box. That helps Manisha ma'am answer it better and we can definitely take all the questions. We have no challenge at all. So if you have a case, and this could be a part of your reflection today, if you've noticed an animal having fun, you could send us a video, you could send us a story, could send us a picture, and we will post it as your reflection from the Sunday school today, an animal having fun. So what about dogs and cats? Anyone who lives with these animals can tell stories about how they love to play. Our dog Maxie liked to play tag with me around our forest lodge. Because she knew she could run much faster than I could, she always gave me a chance to catch her so that the game didn't get boring. She'd run big circles around me every once in a while, dashing towards me. Then, just before I caught her, she sidestepped and I'd miss. You could tell just by looking at her how this game delighted her. I really enjoy looking back to that time, and yet I'd rather find other examples as evidence of completely pointless play, meaning pointless in a positive way. Because Maxie probably used this game to strengthen our relationship. And it's true that any playful activity within a group can act as a social glue and therefore serve an evolutionary purpose. This is interesting. It is true that any playful activity within a group can act as social glue. Now, this I think is a universal comment. Jugi sir, we at my good school talk of service, skill, sport, and study. Now, in this also, there is an element of sport, and sport is for fun. You know, you learn skills for fun. Would you like to read this sentence and reflect on it? It simply
Yeah.
says it's true that any playful activity within a group can act as social glue. What an interesting term they've used, social glue. And in today's day, I wish we had more of social glue and there would be an evolutionary purpose to it. What are your thoughts about this? You remember any incident where you suddenly felt that a particular game or a prank acted as a social glue?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what the IPL did to what happens on the field, the same people were now suddenly in the same team. When they play for their country, they're against each other, but in the IPL, they were in the same team. And that changed the behavior on the field when the countries were playing with each other, just because they became friends when they were in the same team. Right? Even in many other cases, I mean, it's very well known that teams play hard at each other when they're playing, but after the game, then they socialize with each other. So I think the respect develops on the other party's capabilities, and so yeah, I mean, sport. I think many examples. And even I mean, we've seen it in school all the time. People who are playing for the same team or even against each other become friends because they start to gain respect from that activity.
Perhaps you've noticed, Jugdeep sir, sometimes you'll see a dog and monkey as a friend, a cat and dog as a friend. You see these in our domesticated world. You'd so often see, unlike animals who are friends, a parrot and a cat become friends. The other day, there was a crow and a kitten who became friends, and they would meet and do things together. So the social glue transcends a particular animal species. It actually sometimes links across. You sometimes think the lion will eat up the deer, but there are cases when lion has shown empathy for the deer also. You have so many examples like that. So I think this is part of nature. And why this happens, it's a very hard question with answer. Maybe we should think that why species across their design of life and struggle become friends. It's, you always think that cat and dog can never become friends. I'm using a cat and dog example because they are around us. But so often I've seen cat and dog playing together. You've often heard pigs feeding puppies or dogs. I've actually seen that. A little puppy being fed by a mother sow. So energy invested in cohesion promotes groups and that are particularly resistant to external threats. So there's so many external threats in the animal world. So I think this happiness of fun actually helps them relax and sometimes get peace. I'm sure Jugdeep said for them also this may be a meditative experience. It's like we say, chill, chill, relax. So they're always threatening each other, fighting with each other, and sometimes when they come together for a social purpose, it perhaps add to their life and healing. So let's take another look at crows. There are lots of reports of crows that tease dogs. They stalk them from behind and nip them on the tail. Of course, dog spins around too slowly to catch the bird, which soon starts the game all over again. This is not a case of creating social cohesion, and it's not a case of the bird honing some survival skill either. After all, escaping from spinning dogs is not necessarily part of the behavioral repertoire. So please mark this word, behavioral repertoire. So it's a very interesting word. Explore the meaning and write down in your reflection. What do you think behavioral repertoire is? Manisha ma'am, will you note this question?
Yes, sir.
No, what's going on here seems to be something completely different. The crow can clearly put himself in the dog's place and realizes that the dog will always be too slow and will therefore get annoyed. And that's what makes it so much fun to tease it over and over again, gleefully anticipating its reaction. Lots of crows enjoy doing this, as any number of internet videos attest. You may have also seen crows sitting on top of buffaloes, crows sitting on top of buffaloes. It's a very common sight, particularly in the water, and buffalo can do nothing about it. The guy is literally sitting on top of the buffalo, even in water sometimes you'll see. Yugdeep sir, should we read another chapter?
Yes, we have time. It's short. Next one is also short.
Lovely. So the interesting thing is that we always thought fun was a human thing. And I think it's fascinating how animals do things for the heck of it. We just have fun. And when we as humans think animals, we always think of instinct and behavior that is aggressive, that is antithesis. But after all species have been made to live with each other. And the beauty when you hear examples like this and you hear stories like this, the fun element is fundamental to a living being. So I remember if you read The Secret Lives of Trees, when we read, And trees also had fun sometimes. There was an example about trees living as a community, how as a community they care for each other, how trees to have a social behavior. So that is also very, very interesting. Trees have a social behavior just like animals do. There's a question in the chat box, Manisha ma'am. Any questions?
Well, there was a comment from learning language. Is that Ila ma'am?
Yeah,
Learning
learning
language.
Leela, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
So she gave an example of animals playing with siblings.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good example. Animals with siblings, a great example. Thank you, Ila ma'am. Ila ma'am, on that note, you tried to register for a professional learning program last week. Is that right? Manisha,
Yeah,
you may have.
I was trying, sir.
Yeah.
Actually, I wanted to be, you said I want to be certified by you.
Okay. So, Manisha ma'am, just help her register for the certification program because she's anyway
Sure, sir.
taking enough sessions across the board and she is putting reflections so she can apply for the certification program.
I'm there to be the part of your team.
Yeah, Ila ma'am, what you can do in case you're having a challenge paying with your card, Manisha ma'am, just give her the UPI ID. It's very simple. LF at IDBI. So she can send the fees for certification to the ID directly without any credit card or without any other business.
Yes, I'll pass it
Sorry,
on
we
to him.
don't accept money on phone numbers just to be careful because we are not for profit, we are audited. So we don't have a phone number where we can accept money, but we have a UPI ID. As we are legally accountable, we don't take transactions which we don't know and which we can't handle. So you can transact with us at LF at IDBI. It's very simple. IDBI is a bank. LF stands for Learning Forward. So Ila ma'am, just do that. Manisha will help you register. And after you
Sure,
register,
sir.
if you want a certificate which is open for everyone over the age of 18. So what certification really means, Jugdeep sir, this is an extension of the master class and the learning forward teachers who attend throughout the year and they submit 5 reflections and posts. End of the year, they can apply for a certificate. Like
Yeah.
we have just completed last year's certification cycle of 24. So yesterday I mentioned that 45 teachers from Sunbeam had actually applied for certification and 33 made it, Jugdeep sir. 32 Manisha ma'am, if I'm right, right? Manisha
That's
ma'am,
good.
32?
So
Yes, it
when
was
can be
32
the
certificates.
Yeah. Yes, Sheila ma'am.
sir? When will I get the certificate?
Ma'am, we normally ask you to put an average of 25 hours of work and certificate is every year. We do certification once a year.
So in which month?
Ma'am, we normally take 1 calendar year. So if you go back, perhaps you can give the date when you joined because you've been regular. So we'll take the calendar year. That's how we do our certification.
Fine, sir. Fine. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So Manisha ma'am will help you. Please help. And if there are any other teachers who want to apply for certification, it's a very good certification, quality certification. It comes from Learning Forward because we are an affiliate of Learning Forward International. So that's part of the desire. So Ila ma'am's desire is to get certification, and I'm sure we can help her fulfill it. So let's read about desire. Sex is not an automatic process for animals. Although you would be forgiven if, after reading scientific papers on mating, you concluded that it is an act completely devoid of emotion. Hormones feature and they trigger instinctive behaviors that animals are capable of resisting. But is it any different from people? I just have to think back to the couple I came across years ago in the woods. So now he's giving you examples that what are the emotions, how they feel. So in the last chapter, we are looking at fun. So what we're trying to say is that humans think of themselves as a unique species. No, humans are just one species that live on the earth. They are part of the nature, they're part of the ecosystem. We have this ego that we humans, and this is the challenge that it's not we humans, it's us living in this world who are all very similar. And what Peter tries to explain again and again that every living cycle has a purpose. Every living cycle has emotion. Every living being has a desire. All I want to do was check out whose car was parked in the undergrowth when two beet red faces appeared from behind the bonnet. I knew both the man and the woman. They came from neighboring villages and at the time were married to different partners and still are. They quickly adjusted their clothing, climbed into their cars without saying a word, and disappeared. Interesting way to start a chapter, Jogi sir. Clearly, they did not want to risk their marriages and had therefore chosen to supposedly secluded spot for sex. Okay, this is the undergrowth. So this guy got a car there. He wanted to see his car mein kya ho raha hai. Even though there remained a risk of dire consequences for their personal lives, both of them had succumbed to desire. I think this is a good example of we too are at the mercy of our instincts. So he's trying to link instinct and desire. Now let's see. The trigger of such behavior is a cocktail of hormones that gives rise to feelings of exquisite satisfaction and joy. But why is it that even necessary? If living beings are supposed to mate, they could mate as instinctively as they breathe. After all, our bodies don't release supplements of drug-like substances to trigger every breath. Mating is special because during copulation of species abandon themselves to a state of helplessness. So there are words here you need to understand what the meanings are. He's talking of copulation, all species abandon themselves. So what happens with the hormones? You actually don't be your normal self. You get carried away. Sadomasochistic animals such as snails ram chalky darts into each other's bodies to stimulate their partners. Male peacocks and grouse attract their hen's attention with a fan of erect tail feathers before jumping on her. Insect couples hitch aerial piggyback rides. Male toads in the raptures of love clamp down on the female underwater. Sometimes multiple males pile on top of one another and they don't let go, holding the female down as long as that she drowns. Goats, which behave in many ways like deer, undergo a somewhat more elaborate ritual every year in late summer. At that time of the year, a billy goat, Vito, turns into a monster of stink. To please the ladies, he perfumes his face and forelegs with a very special fragrance, his own urine. And he doesn't just spray the yellow liquid onto his skin, he also sprays it into his mouth. That would make us gag. Obviously, doesn't fail to have the desired effect on the female goats. They rub their heads over his coat to absorb the smell. This clearly stimulates hormone production in all involved, and the fire of desire are lit. You know, you also look so often dogs, they will leave their pee at odd places, and dogs identify each other with the smell of the pee. The billy goat keeps testing with his nose to see if one of the does it really ready to let him in. He does this by driving her around the pasture while bleating with his tongue hanging out, which actually looks a bit ridiculous. If the lady of his dreams stands her ground and scots to pee, he shoves his nose into the stream. Then he snorts and curls back his upper lip to check her hormone levels to see if this will be his lucky day. After many days of testing, he finally allows Vito a few seconds of bliss. Let's go back to the question of why there has to be any sort of hormone fueled emotional reward. The backstory is that mating is dangerous. The prelude to mating, when males often draw attention to themselves, doesn't just attract females. Indeed, hungry predators are also grateful for an eye or ear catching sign pointing the way to a tasty meal. So, which means that in this case, they attract the attention of other species for a kill. And quite a few males of different species do, in fact, step off their woodland stage directly into the stomach of a bird or a fox. The actual act of mating is even more dangerous. While it's going on, both participants are pressed tightly together for a few seconds and sometimes even for many minutes. and are hardly in a position to flee from an attack. We don't know if animals like the connection between mating and offspring. Yet, what other reason could there be for them to take this risk? Only one comes to my mind: the strong, addictive feeling of orgasm that causes them to throw caution to the wind and abandon themselves to pleasure. Therefore, I believe, without a doubt, that animals experience intense emotions when they have sex. So it's interesting. Animals have intense emotions. And I think sometimes if you notice, let's take dogs in your area, you will have one bitch on heat and you'll have 20 dogs behind. And you see the dogs get so aggressive. That's why they end up biting and fighting with everyone. So this is where the emotions come. And this is very different. Perhaps humans need to be more socially conscious and don't get so aggressive and don't abandon so much for whatever reason. But animals, for them, when that goal comes, they lose their life, they lose their senses. So animal experiences intense emotions. So this is a little different from what humans should be or are. And there is another strong indicator that this is so. Quite a few animals have been observed pleasuring themselves. Deer, horses, wild cats, and brown bears all have been seen either laying a hand, that is to say, a paw, on themselves or taking advantage of natural aids such as tree trunks. Unfortunately, there are not many reports, let alone any research on the subject, perhaps because masturbation is considered a taboo. How small is the next one, Jugjeev sir? I think we're reaching death now. Read the next one if you have time.
It's 5 pages.
Yeah, so should we read the next one, Jugjeev sir?
Yeah, please do. Please do. It's short.
Yeah, so it's very interesting.
Found a video on this, crow sliding down the roof.
Lovely. So once I read this chapter, you want to show it now?
No, I'll show it later. I'm going to send it to Manisha. She can show it.
Okay. So I'll read this chapter. Why I want to read this is because if it's a continuation of the last two chapters, it's sequential. You talk of fun, you talk of desire, and then death. So it's quite like a human being: fun, desire, death. So animals are very much like, we often think that we are different. So why we are reading this book is we are trying to understand the inner life of animals, that we are very much like them and they are very much like us. Minute we appreciate them, we will look at life differently. We look at nature, we look at conservation, we look at animals, and we must understand them and let them live till death do us apart. Does it make sense to think of animal pairings as marriage? According to the dictionary definition, marriage is a legally recognized lifelong partnership between two individuals. Wikipedia states that marriage is a socially or ritually recognized union or legal contract between spouses. So now you know what marriage is. There is no such thing as legal recognition for animals. So Jugi, they don't have courts to go and register. But there is such a thing as close lifelong partnership. So even in the animal species, they recognize lifelong partnership. The raven is particularly moving example. It is the largest songbird in the world, and by the middle of the 20th century, it was almost extinct in Central Europe. It was alleged that ravens killed grazing animals as large as cows. Today, we know that this is nonsense. Ravens are the vultures of the north, and they seek out dead or at most dying animals. Yet they were ruthlessly hunted and killed, using both weapons and poison. Historically, campaigns to get rid of undesirable animals have met with mixed.
Excuse me, sir. Sir, undesired means
Not wanted, Peter.
okay, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. God bless you. Historically, campaigns to get rid of undesirable animals have met with mixed success. Now, the interesting part here is if you see in your colony, you have a dog who bites, that dog is undesirable. And as we live in this world and this conflict between animal and man increases, there are always people who sympathize with the species and say that desperation is for a cause. Where we live in Delhi, there are two sets of people in our RWA, one who will save the dogs and one who want dogs to be eliminated. And I think, Yugdeep sir, this is there in every resident welfare association. You have two groups either way.
Yep, yep, yep.
In the 20th century, people wanted to eradicate the red fox because it can carry rabies. Foxes were shot on sight, and they still are. Their dens are dug up, and any young found in them are destroyed. Poison gas pumped into the underground accommodation was a convenient way to kill them. But despite these measures, the red fox has survived because it is very adaptable and reproduces prolifically. And most importantly, red foxes change their sexual partner. In contrast, ravens are faithful souls and stick with their mate for life. In this respect, we can indeed talk of a true animal marriage. During the extermination campaign, the bird's fidelity was their undoing. If one bird in a pair was shot or poisoned, the other often didn't seek a new partner. But from then on, it flew its circuits in the sky alone. The large number of single birds contributed no young, which hastened destruction of the species. Today, ravens are strictly protected in Central Europe and once again populate their ancestral range. I still remember a trip to Miriam, and I made to Sweden with our children. As we paddled our canoes over a deserted lake, we often heard ravens call, and I was entranced. What a nice word. Entranced means I was trapped in a state of joy. I was so excited when a few years ago I heard these birds for the first time in the forest that I manage in Hummel. Hummel is the place where Peter lives and he has his own forest. Since then, I think these animals as symbols for how nature can heal from our crimes against it and how destruction of the environment need not be a road of no return. We are always talking of the environment. We are talking of so many conferences all over the world where we are saying that species are losing. And if you go back to the COVID times, it shows some species came back. We gave respite. And in that little respite also things happened. In Uttarakhand, we have the Nanda Devi sanctuary. It was closed for a few years. It came back and became the normal sanctuary with animals, nature, everything living in coexistence. So given respite, nature heals. Monogamous animals are common. Monogamous means who don't have procreate, especially among birds. There are several species that behave like ravens, although none quite as rigorous. So the raven example is that if you lose your partner, you don't live with another one. That's the typical raven example. Could you go back to the last page? I missed the last word. Yeah, monogamous gamous animals are common, especially among birds. There are several species that behave like ravens, although none quite as rigorously. They remain true to the same partner, at least within a single breeding season. There's the white stork, for instance. Although the stork remains true to is actually its nest from one season to the next. And often, the only reason partners meet up again is because both head back to their old nest every spring. Sometimes, however, things can go awry, as reported by an employee of the Heidelberg Zoo. Awry, very simple word, wrong. AWRY. So, Jugjeet sir, you remember we read Blue Sky, White Cloud, and the story about the geese,
Yes.
how one loses a partner and how the other then has the last song. So it reminded me of Mr. Nirmal Ghosh's book, which we read some time back. A very, very interesting book about animal life and how they live. So if you people haven't read Blue Sky, White Cloud is the book we've read. It's mentioned on the mygoodschool.in page or a Sunday school page. Do pick up a copy and read it. It's very interesting, very easy to read. Blue Sky, White Cloud. Manisha ma'am mentioned this book in the WhatsApp chat or in the reflection, ma'am, wherever you find convenient. One spring, a stork built a nest up high with a new female. His former partner had obviously gone astray during migration, but then, in the middle of his cozy togetherness, she belatedly appeared. Now the male stork found himself in a quandary. In order to be fair to both females, he built a second nest and then ran himself ragged, providing for both families. Interesting. Polygamy happening here, Jagdeep sir. He built two homes for his two of his females. But why aren't all species of birds so loyal? And what does being loyal really mean? Just because chickadees and other species don't mate for life doesn't mean they are disloyal partners. The reason for a bond that lasts for just one season lies in the average lifespan of birds. So it's the lifespan which creates this need for cohabitation. Whereas ravens, even the dangers of the wild, live for more than 20 years. For other species, mostly the smaller birds, it's all over after less than 5. So average life of a bird is only 5 years. If you mate for life and the likelihood your partner will go missing is very high, then there would soon be mostly singles flying around. And because that would be exceedingly bad news for the survival of the species, for birds with short life expectancies, there's a new roll of dice every spring to see who partners up with whom. That's when birds can see who survived the winter and migration. Great tits and robin redbreasts waste no time grieving over a mate from the previous year that never returns. So, because their life is short, their emotions are also limited. We humans feel that we have a lifelong bond. So, the older animals which you saw, like in the case of raven, that lifelong bonding is there. So, like raven have 20 years, so they know they can live a long life together. But if you have a life of, say, 1 year, yeah, you're asking a meaning of quandary, good. I want you, Jugjeev sir will say, please Google and look up what is the meaning of quandary.
And put it in chat also, please. Do you have another device, or you can use another window on the same device you're on?
So anyone can find the meaning of quandary and put it in the chat box, please. Quandary. We will also add it to reflections. What about mammals?
And sir, exceedingly.
Yes, yes. Google it. Google it.
Let's talk about other mammals. There are only a few that hook up like ravens. Beavers are one such example. They find a life partner and remain with the same animal for up to 20 years. Jugjeev, sir, just the other day I saw a whole bunch of otters chasing dogs.
A whole bunch of
Otters. Yeah. They got out of the river and chased the
River.
heck out of the dogs on a leash. So the
Yeah.
owners and the dogs were running in a whole bunch and otters were chasing them full steam. And otters bite very badly, they're like incisors they have. So,
Yeah, my cousin had told me that during COVID, they'd all come out and they were mostly outside.
yeah, they were all over the
I didn't
place.
see when I went.
They ended up in the Prime Minister's garden also to say hi to him. So the Prime Minister himself took a video and showed. So that is nature's regeneration. But I saw it just a week back. The
Right.
otters got out of the river and they said, let's give it to these dogs.
That's cool.
So that was very interesting. And one saw on the walking path, you have to leash your dog there. You can't walk a dog without leash. So all the owners were running, and then there were some making videos. Now, this is very interesting because they've had accidents. Person making a video and otters have attacked him. So even that has happened. So that's an interesting thing, talking about desires and talking about aggression and talking about species fighting the other. The children don't move out immediately, and the young continue living with their parents in comfortable earth lodges close to the water until they are 2 years old. Most of the species are somewhat challenged in the relationship department, at least when it comes to the opposite sex. When red deer, it's a case of to the strongest go the spoils. Look at the phrase, to the strongest go the spoils. When the red deer, it's a case of to the strongest go to the spoils. Once a mighty stag has routed his rivals, he satisfies himself with the harem of does until he in turn is driven off by even a stronger male. So it's like survival of the fittest. It's clear all the same as to the does. They allow themselves to be mounted by any young buck that tries his luck when the alpha male is not paying attention. Raising fawns is purely women's work anyway, because by the time they are born, their fathers are already off wandering into the woods in male only groups. Thank you. I think you've had a good session about understanding animals, emotions, their lives. So, Manisha ma'am, you want to share the video?
Yes, I'll do it right away. So which one do you want
If
first?
sir has sent you.
Sir sent 3 videos.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
which
yeah.
one do you
You
want?
can do the first one I sent, which is the crow, and then we'll do the others.
Okay.
So, interesting morning today. Sujib sir, finding out the inner life of animals. Lots to reflect, lots to write today. Today's reflection will be interesting. I'm wondering what Manisha ma'am will end up. Manisha ma'am, all the desire and all the animal life you saw today, try and put it together in a reflection piece. So we are going to show you a video. The video Manisha ma'am will screen. It's about tobogganing.
Is my screen visible, sir?
Absolutely, ma'am. Play. Hit the play button.
Смотри. Вот. С горки катается. Она нас, наверное, это дразнит, балует.
Basically, using that piece of plastic to.
Интересно, с какой стороны она сейчас?
And he's setting himself up.
Нет.
Huh.
Она вообще
How a difference though.
Yeah,
не
but
двигается, что-то вот.
somehow not working. So now you see what it does now.
He'll go back to the other one.
Yeah.
See how intelligent he is. You know? Yay!
Мы поедем, мы помчимся на крышечку.
Oh, now it got stuck in the floor.
Клювом.
Не может захватить.
Хочет еще дальше.
His toboggan got stuck in the floor. Oh, he got it.
Видите, ворона такая.
People wanting to record this.
I mean, there were options. I just picked the first one because I was in a bit of a hurry. So I just picked the first one I saw. Yeah, Manisha, you can just stop this. And you know, last time, when we read this book, we read about how smart ravens are. The crow is part of the raven family. So maybe Manisha, you want to play that one about the raven? It's a very short one.
Yeah, just a minute, sir. Oh, smarter ravens.
So Manju, you found all the meanings? Give sir.
Yes, sir. Sir, thank you for telling the meaning.
We didn't say that. The point is that you can find it very easily yourself. I mean, I don't know how we grew up without Google. I mean, it's just, you know.
So you're showing smart
Know
raven?
that ravens are one of the smartest birds. But exactly how smart are our feathered friends? Ravens are one of 4 creatures that display linguistic displacement. This means that ravens can communicate about things that are not immediately in front of them, like a carcass nearby. Ravens are also in the habit of trading, whether it be with other ravens or even with people. And they're smart enough to recognize when a trade is unfair as well. Because they can remember who wronged them, they won't trade with that being anymore. Like many animals, ravens will cache and store food for a later date. However, ravens will often watch where other ravens deposit their food caches and steal from them. This thievery is so common that many ravens will often pretend to cache their food and fly off somewhere else to store it. And honestly, my favorite raven fact is that they're one of the few creatures that understand the concept of fun. They've been observed playing with wolf pups before and even sliding down snowbanks just for the fun of it. Easily one of the most fascinating modern dinosaurs.
Right. So you saw here also, they're having, I mean, rolling in the snow for the heck of it. So for fun.
So the fun element was there. Even the desire element was there. They have a desire to save the food and they can steal it. And you remember we read about that acorn in the
Yes.
chapter earlier, how the guy would hide the acorn and dig 20 places to make sure you don't find the acorn.
Yes. And unlike the squirrel would hide it and forget where it's hidden it. But
Yeah,
the
yeah.
raven,
And then the
remember,
raven would find it.
the crow, I mean, it was a crow, I mean, raven's family. And, in doing sums. So it's figured out also, which, in trade it said, it's been figured out whether trade is not okay. So it's amazing. And we also read about clever Hans, in doing sums. This is that, supposed to be a horse can, do sums. And then the author says that actually, based on what his owner expression was, he was picking numbers because he was able to pick up.
Fascinating one.
Yeah. So it's on that. So we can play that, Manisha. Thanks.
One. Today, I would like to talk to you about a seemingly smart horse with a suspicious intelligence. Wilhelm von Osten was a math teacher in Germany and owned a horse named Hans. In the late 19th century, Hans was trained by von Osten to do many intelligent tasks, including solving math problems, spelling out answers, identifying colors, and much more. This horse could do seemingly anything and would answer just by tapping his foot on the ground. Hans was an international marvel, and, fresh from Darwin's new theory of evolution at that time, society was captivated by the ability of animals. However, many were skeptical of Hans's abilities, and Germany's Board of Education created a group called the Hans Commission to investigate if there was trickery involved with Hans's skills. The commission consisted of a psychologist, a circus manager, many school teachers, a couple zoologists, and a horse trainer. They found absolutely no reason to believe that von Osten or Hans were tricking people into thinking Hans had abilities he did not have. This was their final conclusion, however they were still skeptical. But then a psychologist named Oscar Funks did his own investigation after the Hans Commission and set up numerous experiments to test the horse's abilities under different conditions. He tested having von Osten stand farther away from Hans when asking questions and found that accuracy dropped. He tested if Hans would answer a question correctly if von Osten knew the answer to the question and found that accuracy was good. He tested if Hans would answer a question correctly if von Osten didn't know the answer to the question and found that accuracy dropped to pretty much zero. What is going on here? What Funks noticed was that there wasn't necessarily trickery going on between Hans and von Osten, but unconscious cueing. For example, if von Osten asked Hans what 2 plus 2 is, Hans would begin to tap his foot. But instead of the horse knowing inherently what von Osten is asking, Hans would look at von Osten and stop tapping when von Osten unconsciously signaled that Hans was at the right answer. So if Hans reached the correct answer of 4, von Osten would tense up or look more intently at the horse when Hans was on his 4th tap, but not on purpose. This is obviously hard for Hans to pick up when von Osten doesn't know the answer or is standing far away, which is why accuracy dropped in those scenarios. In fact, this signaling is so subtle that even the Hans Commission could not see it. So why is this important? Well, this event defined what we in psychology call the clever Hans effect. The clever Hans effect is when a person or even animal picks up signals from the person testing them even if they are not doing it on purpose. This can lead to issues when testing. I mean, if I was doing a study where I told you to follow the ball in 3 cups and asked you to guess which cup the ball is in, and then proceeded to
discover clever hands effect, so people can write about the clever hands effect.
Yeah, I just thought I'd Google it and I found that.
And it connected with what we had done. So
yeah.
Another thing what we can do today, Manisha ma'am, maybe you want to show the calendar and make people aware that the calendar for the month is ready. So Jugjeet sir can show it at a particular time. The calendar we just finalized for this month. And
Sure, sir.
we have small numbers today, but these small numbers can share the calendar ahead. That will bring people to these sessions in this exam season. And I'm sure this 1 hour in the morning in this exam season will help you learn so much. It'll build your vocabulary. You will write better in your school. You write better in your exams. You will discover the meaning to so many words. Thank you for being with us. Over to you, Jugjeet sir. Thank you so much.
Right. So, before you go, maybe you want to just share with folks why you chose this book.
Oh, yeah. I read this book twice, Jugjeet sir, actually, before I reached out to you. I read it in Kindle form and I read it in print form.
Right.
And then my mother of 85 also read it. And what we found very interesting and fascinating was the character Sasha, the little girl.
Right.
How the little girl ended up as a teacher to a 72-year-old, which to us gave us a fantastic thought that teaching is not about age, learning is not about age. And how then even the 72-year-old changed his life reflecting on the girls. And this relationship between Sasha and Kurt is so beautiful that, and it revolves around reading. That's a beautiful part. So we thought at my good school, as we champion reading, as we champion relationship, and we look at age as not a barrier. At my good school, Jugjeev sir and me are well over 60, but a lot of you are 10 plus. So we were in a very similar analogy of what the book says. So it kind of showed me something like what's happening in my good school, where we are walking together, where we are talking together, and we are simply talking it for the joy of reading. And another interesting bit in this was, which I thought was very fascinating because I'm in the book business and we have been in it for 100 years, how you understand when you see someone as to what book that person would like to read. There is no scientific process in this. And I can tell you when someone comes to the bookstore, we know what book that person will buy. Now, it's a very uncanny situation. And this has possibly come up from generations. And this is what I saw in this, where Kurt would simply buy books and walk across to his wannabe customers and say, your book is here. They won't say they didn't order it. They would simply say, yes, we want this book. So these things really excited me about this book, and I thought it was very nice to read along. Door to Door Bookstore. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. It's great fun. I've recently picked up another book. It's called The Bookshop. Now, this is the history of bookstores in America and how bookstores have been an essential part of a civilization. Bookstores have been part of, they were alleged to create revolutions. There was a time in America where they had stores which stocked literature which was good on Nazi. There was stores which had the Jewish opinion. So there were bookstores dedicated to societies and communities. So when you read Door to Door Bookstore, you will see how bookstores bring together community one. How bookstores become a space for not just learning, but a space of a social glue, which is what we read in Inner Life of Animals. So bookstores help you become social glue. And when you become social glue, there is more trust, there's a relationship building. That's what this book is all about, Jugjeev sir.
Thank you, Sandeep. In fact, very interesting that you talked about how instinctively you know what kind of books people would like to read. Because as the author says, that's the reason why a bookstore exists.
Yeah, absolutely.
The ability to recommend to people. And,
when you flip this book towards the end, it mentioned another two books.
Which I know, I saw that.
Yeah. So I don't know if we'll read the sequence or not, but even those two books are very fascinating because those two stories are from Japan. And when we read Toto-chan, it reminded me of those days when we were reading Toto-chan.
Yes.
Japanese literature, when translated, is very, very minimal, like the civilization level.
Right.
Very, very minimal. It's very value driven. And it's very much connected to an average human life.
Right.
There is also a book, whatever you want to know, you'll find in the library. That's the name of the book, by the way. So they're all similar genre. So once you read this, maybe we'll find a genre to read after that. I really don't know. But as far as I'm concerned, the book I am going to read after Inner Life of Animals is about nature by the same author. So that will complete the trilogy of Peter Wohlleben. So over to you, Door to Door Bookstore, and welcome to the bookstore.
The first lines of this book, it has been said that books find their own readers, right? So I wonder if you have a book for us on that. How books find their own readers. Peter Wohlleben hasn't written one, based on what you just told us. But
Toto-chan is a fantastic example what started my good school. I shared with you the other day Yellow Train School, if you remember.
Right.
Story of the Yellow Train School.
Yeah.
I sent you the link. So now that we were talking of schools which can influence reading society, social culture, this is an example where they created a train school in India, like Toto-chan. So likewise in a bookstore, there are many things we have to look at. Particularly in a bookstore, we feel that we need an extra sensory perception. So in the bookstore, we have to not just look at the sound and the feel and the light and the nature. We also have to look, we have to have an instinct. And that's the beauty of a bookstore.
Lovely. Lovely.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great day. I'm afraid I have to leave. So enjoy.
No problem.
And in case you want, I think this is being recorded, this particular session today. Ma'am, Fathom will have all the details. You can pick up from there. Manisha ma'am, you'll have a lot of detail on Fathom to build your reflection.
Yes, sir. I've already done something in the blogger and I'll pick from there.
Fathom is available. I see Fathom was there on top. So Fathom, by the way, is my AI robo. So Fathom has taken highlights. So there are some stories in that which you may like to take.
I'll do that, sir.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Yeah, see you.
Same.
So, before we start the book, I just thought I'd tell you a little bit about the author. So, Carsten Henn was born in Cologne in 1973, is a wine journalist and a restaurant critic in addition to his work as an author. He has written many successfully culinary crime novels, as well as romantic comedies, plays, and a picture book. His novel, The Door To Door Bookstore, was on the Spiegel bestseller list for over 2 years. Sold over 500,000 copies in Germany alone, was translated into more than 30 languages, and was made into a film with Christoph Maria Herbst in the title role. His next novels, The Story Baker and The Bread and Butter Letters, were also big bestsellers. He has received several awards for his literary works. Okay, so let's start reading this book. This is what the cover looks like, and we will just see the description of that. Or we'll just hear the description of that. It has been said that books find their own readers. Okay, think about that. It has been said that books find their own readers. And that's why I was joking with Sandeep that, when we read the books by Peter Wohlleben on trees and animals, we sort of discovered so much more about them in terms of how they're more like human than we thought they were. So I was just joking with him whether he'll find something about books like that as well, because it's said here that books find their own readers, but sometimes they need someone to show them the way. Living proof of this could be found at a bookshop in southern Germany that went by the name of the City Gate. Admittedly, the name was an unusual choice, since the actual city gate, or at least what remained of it, which even locals often mistook for an avant-garde artwork, stood a good 3 streets away. Avant-garde means out of the ordinary, so it's not. It's sort of modernistic, or it's out of the ordinary, not the typical. It was a very old bookshop, constructed and extended time and again over numerous historical periods. Extravagant architectural ornament and stucco. Stucco is a plaster, okay, and it's used to create different types of designs, and you see it in many buildings and many, especially in churches. Very, very pretty stucco. And stucco rubbed shoulders with unadorned right angles. The glorious juxtaposition is putting side by side of the old and the new, the flamboyant and the restrained, which characterized the building's exterior, also continued into its interior. Red plastic stands of CDs and DVDs stood next to frosted metal shelves of mangas. Mangas are Japanese comics or graphic novels. These in turn took their place next to globes, displayed in polished glass glass cases or elegant wooden shelves of books. Customers could find board games, stationery, tea, and even chocolate, a recent addition for sale. The labyrinth, which means maze-like labyrinthine room, was dominated by a heavy, dark counter known to employees simply as the altar. What's an altar? Anybody, what's an altar? Okay, please Google it. It looked like a relic from the Baroque period. Carvings on the front depicted a rural scene of a hunting party astride magnificent steeds, a pack of wiry dogs alongside, in pursuit of a group of wild boar. Inside, one late summer's day, the question that is the raison d'etre, which is the reason for being, of every bookshop was being asked. Can you recommend a good book? The questioner, Ursula Schaffer, knew exactly what constituted a good book. Firstly, it must be gripping enough to keep her awake in bed, reading until her eyes drooped shut. Secondly, it must contain at least 3, preferably 4, points at which she was moved to tears. Thirdly, it must have no less than 300 pages, but no more than 380. And fourthly, the cover must never be green. Books with green covers were not to be trusted. Bitter experience taught her this on several occasions. Certainly, replied Sabine Gruber, who had been manager at the city gate for the past 3 years. What kinds of books do you enjoy reading? Ursula Schaffer did not wish to say. She wanted Sabine Gruber to know. After all, as a bookseller, she was surely naturally endowed with a certain level of clairvoyant skill. Clairvoyant is somebody who can see the future and see into somebody else's mind. Give me 3 key words and I will find just the right one to suit you. Romance, rural, cozy. Yes? I wonder, is Mr. Koloff there? Asked Ursula Schaffer, her tone uneasy. He always knows what I like. He knows what everyone likes. No, I'm afraid he is not here today. Mr. Koloff only works for us occasionally now. What a shame. Never mind, I have something for you. A family saga set in Cornwall. Look, the cover art shows the family's stately manor and grounds. It's green. Ursula Schaffer stared at Sabine Gruber in reproach. Reproach is when you're trying to scold somebody. Bright green. That's because the story is set on the Earl of Durnbow's grand estate. It's had very good reviews. The heavy front door opened stiffly, settling the little copper bell above it tinkling brightly. Karl Koloff folded his umbrella, gave it his habitual shake, and placed it in the stand. His gaze scanned the bookshop he called home, on the lookout for new literary arrivals awaiting an introduction to his customers. He always likened himself to a beachcomber who needed only a single glance to spy a hoard of treasures ready to be seized and freed from the grainy sand. As his gaze lit upon Ursula Schaffer, however, the treasures were forgotten in an instant. She threw him a warm smile, as though he were an amalgam of all the charming men she had fallen in love with in the pages of the books he'd recommended over the years. In reality, Carl resembled none of those characters. He had once had a small paunch, but over the years it had receded, much like the hair on his head, as though they had entered into a pact to disappear together. Now, at age 72, he was lean, but continued to wear his old, now oversized clothes. His former boss, Sabine's father, had told him he'd begun to look as though his only source of nourishment was the words in his books, which were notoriously low in carbohydrates, but rich in substance, Carl had responded. Carl wore rugged is tough, heavy shoes of thick black leather with soles solid enough to last a lifetime. Good socks were also essential, in his opinion. These he combined with olive green overalls and matching collared jacket. On his head, he wore a narrow-brimmed fisherman's hat to protect his eyes from rain and bright sunshine. He never took it off, even indoors, other than to sleep. Somehow he felt less than fully clothed without it. Nor was he ever seen without his glasses, the frames bought from an antique shop decades ago. Behind them peered shrewd eyes. Shrewd is astute, which bore signs of a lifetime of reading too long in poor light. Miss Schaffer, how lovely to see you, he said, stepping towards Ursula Schaffer just as she took a step towards him and away from Sabine Gruber. May I recommend a book that would make ideal bedtime reading? I so enjoyed the last one, especially when they gazed into each other's eyes in the end. A kiss would have been even better to seal the deal, but on this occasion I'll settle for a gaze. It was almost more intense than a kiss, don't you think? Some gazes can be. Not when I'm doing the kissing. For a moment, Ursula Schaffer felt deliciously wicked, a rare occurrence for her nowadays. This book, said Carl, taking one from the pile next to the till, has been waiting for you since the moment it was unpacked. Set in Provence. Provence is a region in France, and every word scented with lavender. Oh, Bordeaux red books are the best. Does it end with a kiss? Have I ever given an ending away? No, she spouted back, but took the book from his hand. Carl would never dream of recommending a novel without a happy end to her. But on no account would he rob Ursula Schaffer of the tiny thrill of wondering whether this one would be different. I'm so glad there are books in the world, she said. I hope that's one thing that never changes. So many things do, and this happens so fast. Everyone pays with plastic money now. People give me such odd looks whenever I count out the right things at the till. Written word will always remain, Miss Schaffer. Sometimes there is simply no better form of expression. Print is the best preserving agent for thoughts and stories. It keeps them fresh for centuries. So let's just stop here for a second. We've read a little bit. It's a little more hard words than the last book we had read, and I hope you'll be able to follow it. I've been trying to give you, the meanings as we going along. So, City Gate, right? I mean, that's the name of the bookshop. Baroque. I came across Baroque period, right? So, does anybody have any idea which is the Baroque period? It was, I remember looking it up, I think the 17th and early 18th century. Yeah, 17th and early 18th century. And it was the period just after the Renaissance. And it refers to styles. Could be art, could be writing, poetry, architecture. So the different style of how things were, conceived of at that particular time. And when I was looking at some of the artists from that period, Rembrandt, and I remember seeing Rembrandt's Night Watch in Amsterdam, which is one of his most famous paintings, right? Earl, we came across Earl, right? Earl is a British title. It's like third highest in their rank. The bookshop had a bell which rang when Carl entered. Why do you think that happened? Any thoughts? Why did that happen? Why do people put a bell? Manju, you want to try and answer that? Why do people put a bell at the entrance of a store? I mean, actually, I'm sure you know the answer to that. Yes, please go ahead. Yes, Meenakshi ma'am.
Yeah. One reason you can't hear me. You hear me?
Yes, there's now.
Yeah. So one reason is because see, most of the bookstore, the keepers, they are busy reading or doing some work while they are at it, and when the bell rings, they are warned of the person who's coming in. That is one reason. Okay, there could be other reasons as well, like but that is the main reason that I think. Always have seen that bookstore keepers, they need not be always be sitting at the counter. They
Yeah.
might be elsewhere arranging books, reading books, doing whatever, and that is the.
No, absolutely. It's to alert them that somebody's walked in. I mean, many times, you can have somebody who's alone in another part of the store. So, I mean, bookstores and other stores also have seen that that's happening. When he's talking of Carl's eyes, it said that looks like somebody who's read in poor light. So, does reading in poor light damage the eyes? What do you all think? Reading in poor light, does it damage the eyes? Actually, the answer is no. And I was quite surprised myself. And it just puts more strain on your eyes. But it
Yes,
actually doesn't damage the eyes. Yes, Meenakshi.
the power does not increase at all, but yes, there's a lot of strain in eye and headaches and all can happen. So
Right.
that is the thing. Otherwise, no.
Yes, and it's the same with screens apparently. That's
Yeah.
what it does. Strains your eyes and actually doesn't damage your eyes. Okay, so let's get back to the book. Where will we? Okay. With a warm smile of farewell, Karl Koloff stepped through a door covered with advertising posters into a room that served as both stockroom and office for the bookshop. Inside was a desk barely visible under stacks of books and an old computer monitor framed with yellow post-its. An enormous calendar covered in red pen dominated the wall. As always, his book orders were waiting in a black plastic crate in the darkest corner of the room. In former times, their place had been on the desk, but since Sabine had taken the bookshop over from her father, the crate had migrated a little farther away each day towards the least accessible corner. In tandem With its migration, the crate's contents had gradually reduced. Few people needed book delivery these days, and every year the numbers continued to dwindle. That's true of bookshops as well, right? I mean, we'll get some leaves inputs on that. But, that's why if you noticed in the beginning, the bookshop has also started to sell a lot of other things, right? CDs, chocolate was the latest addition, right? Board games, stationery, tea. So bookshop, is trying to add things to what else they sell besides books to get customers in. Hiya, Mr. Koloff. What did you make of the game? That was never a penalty. The ref must have been blind. Leon, the new work experience lad, exited the tiny staff toilet, followed by a cloud of cigarette smoke. Anyone else would have known it was utterly useless asking Carl such a question. He never watched the news, never listened to the radio, never read a newspaper. He would have been the first to admit that he had lost touch with the world. It had been a deliberate decision. Once all the reports of incompetent state leaders, ice-capped melt, and suffering refugees had begun to sadden him more than the most tragic literary family saga ever could. Right? So real life he's finding is, worse than what's in the books. It had been a form of self-preservation, even though his world had shrunk as a result. The world he now inhabited measured no more than 2 by 2 kilometers, and he patrolled its borders every day. Have you heard of J.L. Carr's fantastic book about football? Asked Carr, preferring to ask a question than to take sides on the issue of referees' competence. Is it about our club? No, it's about the Steeple Cinderby Wanderers. Never heard of them. Don't read books anyway. Only if I have to. In school. Even then, I try to watch the film instead. Leon grinned, as if this was a cunning way to make a fool of his teacher rather than himself. Then why are you doing work experience here? My sister did the same 3 years ago. We live around the corner. It's a short walk to get here. Leon was to work at the bookshop for 2 weeks, as was customary for most students in Germany. He neglected to mention that anyone who failed to find the work experience place was forced to spend the allotted 2 weeks helping the caretaker who would use the time and a selection of suitably humiliating tasks to take his revenge on the whole school body, as represented by the work experience students. For all the graffitied walls, old chewing gum stuck under desks, and discarded self-eaten packed lunches. Discarded half-eaten packed lunches. Does your sister enjoy reading? After she came here, sure, but that won't happen to me. Carl smiled. He knew exactly why Leon's sister had taken to reading. His former boss, Gustav Gruber, now a resident at the Munsterblick care home, had known exactly what to do with reluctant readers like Leon and his sister. He could set them to dusting each individual plastic wrapped greeting card one by one. The student in question was guaranteed, out of sheer despair at the tedium, to reach for the nearest book, which of course had been strategically deposited within easy reach by Gruber himself. Gustav Gruber had converted them all. He had always been good with children. To Carl, children had always been unfathomable creatures. Someone he couldn't understand, that is. Even back when he himself had been one. And the further he left his own childhood behind, the more strange and peculiar they seemed to him. So two things. One, in the earlier part I was reading, they talked of changes that have happened in one's lifetime. Right? I mean, I can also recall many, but would somebody else recall some changes in day-to-day life a few years ago and now? What would it be? Some changes over the years that you've seen. Right? What comes to mind? Big changes. In groups versus in rooms. Tell us more. What do you mean by that, ma'am?
Sorry, there was typing mistake, sir. It is in grounds and in rooms. Now we are with Wi-Fi enabled room, and we used to be in ground. We were very social.
Can you say that again? We used to be in grounds.
Ground, sir. Outside the house. Never
Right,
indoor.
right. Yes, because of all the devices and internet, indoor is significantly more than outdoor. Children play less, right, compared to earlier.
We were close to nature as well as people.
Right, now you're with yourself.
Yeah. We are watching the things of nature on the screen.
Right. Yes, that technology, because of the way technology has moved, that's been a big change in life. Obviously, how we communicate, the point that that was made earlier, because of technology and way of communication, email, phone, the world seems much smaller, right?
And one more great change we can find in a few years, sir. We used to be together. Now we are individuals. For example, we used to sit before TV. We were together. Now we sit before mobile. We are individuals.
Right. Yeah. And but I mean, eventually it's something to do with us as parents also, right?
Agree.
I mean, in terms of what we are able to get children to imbibe, right?
True, sir.
So yeah, a lot of many changes. How we travel, where all we at. Where all you. I mean, as a kid, I remember. I mean, when somebody went abroad, the full family we came to see them off, came to receive them. It's such a big thing. I mean, it's fairly common now. The age at
Yeah.
which children are able to fly now. I mean, it's amazing how things have changed, how accessible information is. Google in itself, search engines. I mean, it's just
And interestingly, sir, the people who went to abroad in ancient time, they were the legends. Whether we talk about Mahatma Gandhi ji or Vivekanand ji, they turned to be legends. Now we do not find as many legends as we used to.
yes and no. So I fundamentally agree with what you're saying, because you're coming from a moral side, right? In terms of,
Yeah.
but eventually people who are at the front end of, let's say, technology, doing, inventing things and all, would be, you could say they're legends, right? In terms of, if somebody can clone a human being, right? I mean, you would say that he'd be a legend, right? People are cloning animals currently, right? So yeah, I mean, I think just the outlook has changed a lot, but yeah, in terms of leading the world, in terms of what we're seeing everywhere in the world, there's more. It I mean, that's why Carl has stopped watching watching the news, right? Because of the quality of leadership that he sees around and what's happening, right? And especially after Trump coming in, right? It's become even more
Same,
and
sir.
more.
When you were talking about Shami Das, for him also you told the same thing, that he was the man who studied in abroad, but he really wanted to work for his nation, isn't it?
Right, right. I mean, he saw lots of things had to be fixed here, right? So I think that's one of the
Yeah.
things that drove him back here. But also, I think it's also with opportunities and what comes your way. So yeah, I think. I mean, Mahatma Gandhi certainly chose to come back, right?
Yeah, so Shami Das chose to stay here. But
Yeah.
today, people, once they go outside, they prefer to stay outside, not to come back to their nation.
I think again, it's a
This,
mix. I think it's a mix. There are many who stay outside, but I think earlier, I mean, I don't have data on it, but I would guess that the percentage of people coming back now has gone up. Percentage, huh? Maybe more are going, and so in numbers may look huge, but I would imagine because the opportunities in India are much more, right? In
yeah,
in the 70s, the opportunities, 60s, 70s, even early 80s, opportunities were less, right? So I think the opportunities outside were more, but here India is on the move, right? So I mean, the opportunities are
growing.
many. I mean, over the next 5 years, many markets will double. And just think
Yeah,
about it. Anything that you do, you could be successful at if you're good at what you do. I mean, everything is going to double. I mean, I'm talking of products, right? Not necessarily schools and teachers and students because they won't. But in terms of consumption, things will double. So it's in the next. And think about it. It took India's economy took many decades to move from 1 trillion to 2 trillion. The next trillion comes faster. The next trillion comes faster. So opportunities are certainly massive in India now. So I think that's one of the reasons people are coming back. But yeah, many people still leave and they prefer to stay. There are many in my family who've not chosen to come back. They went to study, and that's what happened. And we just read about this lady, Sabine Gruber's father, staying in a care home, which is also a very Western thing. Are you seeing it in India now? Is this thing starting to happen? Care homes for older people? Do we
For
have?
older people. No, 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 no. In my surrounding, not much, sir.
Yeah. So do you think it'll happen in India? The same thing.
It may be, sir, so for our kids, or maybe after a few years for us also.
Yeah. I mean, you have the family bonds, I guess, a little stronger, but the key thing, I think, what you mentioned about individualism, that's what drove it, right? So if that sort of thing keeps going up, then that's what will happen.
It has started in India, so old age. We have senior living, the Antara near Kasigar School, Dehradun. There's another one in Dehradun, which is in the Upper Rajpur Road. And as students, we used to go to St. Vincent's House, Calcutta, to look after the old, to meet the old people living over there, and the Little Sisters Home. So it's there, very much there in India, but yeah, maybe not to the extent it is in the West, but it's still there.
So, something like an Antara is, I mean, basically every independent by themselves, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, I was talking more care home more in terms of the other example you gave, right? I mean, there are,
St. Vincent and Little Sisters were proper care homes where
yeah,
old
yeah,
people
yeah,
were.
where basically it's a whole bunch of older people living together in the same house because, and they don't have any family with them because in Antara it's very different, right? You can come and go,
Yeah,
family can be there, you're on your own,
yeah.
pretty much.
But again, it may not be of the same caliber as St. Vincent's or Little Sisters Home. But then again, it is a place where old people can go and live and be comfortable. Everything is looked into at a price. If you have money, you can, of course, go for these. But it simply means that if your family members cannot take care of you, then that is one place where you can be sure that you'll be taken care of in your old age. So that is one thing that is there. We may not always choose to be like that. Indians have this mindset that our families are our best sense of they are our best support. But many people may opt for living this sort of a life too, because what happens is when children grow up, they may not always be in a position to stay with us and support us. They might be living in another town or in another place, and we may not want to go there. So that is also there.
Very
So
true, ma'am.
awesome.
The
Yes.
difference here is we do not have old age home in my city, but here the people, kids go abroad and they stay there, and the people they are staying here and
Mm,
they have everything with them. They can manage their food and all with the
yeah,
servants. So they are not going to old age home, but they are somewhere living like in an old age home because they are living alone. They are not
yeah,
with their kids.
yeah.
I just want to add here, like West, we do have townships also started developing where it is there with all the amenities and all the nursing and care and everything, and people are like old people are volunteering to live with them together. Townships
Yeah,
Nice.
existed in India.
Yeah,
that
nice,
is
nice.
somewhat the concept of this thing, Antara as well.
Exactly.
They have everything within the campus, including a medical team and a restaurant and people to come and take care of them, clean up their house
I
and
know a
everything.
temple in Maharashtra, Pune,
Yeah.
where on the first floor there is a temple with good garden, beautification is there. And on the ground floor there is old age home. Like in case I want to go and live, I'll just pay something, and me and my spouse, till the time we are alive, both of us, we will be living there. And after that, it will be transferred to somebody else. So we won't become the owner of that particular flat or a room or something. But till the time we are alive, we can enjoy that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So part of it is, we moved from a joint family system to now many families being nuclear, right? I think more than 50% are nuclear, and for sure in the urban areas. I remember reading somewhere. Uh, that's one thing. And I was just wondering whether you have the joint family system outside India. Does anybody know? Do you have a joint family system outside India? When I
Since
Googled it, what it tells me is that it's basically is there in other parts of Asia, particularly in China, Korea, and part of the Middle East. So there in some of these cultures, but I didn't come across there in the Western world. So I don't know. That may be one difference. Maybe the family bonds are stronger here. Anyway, let's see. Current individualism, as Ida ma'am pointed out, is certainly going against it. So let's see how things go. Old Gruber had tempted Leon's sister with a novel in which a young woman falls in love with a vampire. For Leon, clearly brimming with raging hormones, Gruber would have left out a book with a beautiful teenage girl on the cover and large print pages. It's important that they read, not what they read. So, any comments on that? It's important that they read, not what they read. Any comments on
Yes, yes, I think so. It's important. Both are important in their own way. First, it's important to read. Second is, of course, any sort of literature, I think it gives you a lot of, something to think about. So it's important to read. What we read, then of course the choice comes once we start recognizing what we like, and then it comes. That's how I feel, because I have read all sorts of literature. Okay,
Agree.
including Mills and Boons, a lot of it as well, which is
that?
not
Right.
considered to be much of a literature. But then over a period of time, I've decided to shift to something, more. Now I'm more into metaphysics. I, of course, wouldn't go for those books. I've read Shakespeare. I've read Charles Dickens. I've read all those things. When
Right.
I was deciding what to read. So, and that is how it is. And
Right. Right. So it's important that they read not what they read. Old Huber had always said. Carl couldn't quite endorse that view for all the books. The ideas found between the covers of some were worse than poison, but more often than not, there was healing to be found on the page, sometimes even for ailments the reader hadn't realized that they were suffering from. So has that ever happened to you, Meenakshi ma'am? You mentioned reading, right? It says that there was healing to be found on the page, sometimes even for ailments that readers hadn't realized they were suffering from.
I'll give you an example. Healing in a way you can say it. I was reading Deepak Chopra's Buddha.
Mhm.
Okay. And we keep talking about, enlightenment. We
Right.
don't really understand what is enlightenment. We've been studying what was enlightenment since the time that I've been in class, maybe 5 or 6, when
Right.
we studied about Buddha. But it was
Right.
very difficult to understand. But in Deepak Chopra's Buddha, he describes, what happened to Buddha during the process of meditation under the Bodhi tree, and thereafter when he got up from his meditation and he started moving along the streets, and he could feel as if he was a part of the street, and the street was, and the trees and everything was a part of him. Somehow it touched a core of my being, and
Right.
I realized, okay, that is what meditation might mean. Okay,
Right.
when you become one with nature, technically speaking, we all knew all these things, but the way they described it,
Right.
he described it, that made me, identify with it. Otherwise, it could not. So that's a part of healing. You understand, okay, you are part of nature. Nature is part of you, and meditation is like you sit, your fears go away, your anger and all goes away. Simply goes away. You let it come to you, and it goes away. You somehow end up identifying with all these things. So that's a part of healing and all those things. Your mindset grows, and your mind opens up, and all those things happen. So that's, I should say, it is true. Then, of course, I'm also into Reiki and acupressure. Okay. And that also is something that has come to me through reading. The first time I was exposed to these ideas, it was through books, and then caught my imagination. And then, of course, I healed my sinuses through, the sinus, I had that through acupressure.
Right.
Reiki is always there for me. So that is how it is.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yes. So that's interesting. With great care, Carl pulled the crate out from its corner. There were only 3 books lying forlornly inside. He took out brown paper and string to pack each book individually, as though it were a gift. Sabine Gruber had told him on numerous occasions he shouldn't bother and to spare the expense, but Carl insisted. His customers would expect it. In a reflex action, Carl was entirely unaware. His hand stroked each cover before wrapping the books in the thick paper. Finally, he picked up his olive green army backpack, marked with all the wear and tear, Bundeswehr use, but still in good condition thanks to Karl's care. Bundeswehr is the German forces, Army, Navy, Air Force. Although it was empty, the fall of its cloth clearly indicated emptiness was not its natural form. He gently lowered the books between the heavy folds on the backpack, which he had lined with a soft blanket, as though he was carrying tiny puppies to their new owners. He arranged the 3 books in the backpack, with the smallest resting farthest away, while the largest nestled next to his back, where it would not be compromised by the curve of the backpack. As he was leaving, he paused, then turned to Leon. Please, would you dust the greeting cards? Miss Gruber would like that. Best to arrange them in here. And then you can work in peace. I've always done it at the desk. Whisking Nick Hornby's fever pitch from the shelf where he had spied it earlier, he laid it on the desk. The football pitch was a luscious shade of green. Ursula Schaffer wouldn't have given it a second glance. So you can see now he's trying Mr. Gruber's trick on Leon. And this Nick Hornby's fever pitch is actually about relationship with his football club, Arsenal. So it's something that Leon will certainly find interesting, right? So, Manish, should we stop here?
There's, can I speak?
Yeah,
I
please.
just there is this book that I had read, Conversations with God.
Yeah.
Okay, it's by Neil Donald Walsh. The book
Yeah.
1 and book 2 especially is very healing. And you come to they explain everything. Like when we think about he's explained to us that everything comes in pairs. You can't understand the good unless you understand the bad. So when if you want to experience the ultimate joy, you need to know the ultimate sorrow as well. So you experience everything in a thing in pairs, in opposites. So unless you do that, you don't you really cannot experience what you want to experience. So that is a very healing thing, that you come to know, okay, so the things are not going well with you, but it's okay. By the end of it, you are going to experience something which is very, very joyful, something something that you really wish to experience, and that in itself puts everything in perspective. So that is about healing part. I mean, you were talking about. So
Yeah, sure. I remember reading that part 1. It's very nice. Yeah. Ilham, you wanted to say something?
No, I agree to it, sir. The perspective definitely matters. When we say keep patience, things will come to you. So our hard work result in good things. It somewhere soothes, and even it heals all the toughness, all the hardship we have gone through to the process. So it's true. It's true. Time takes its own time, and it's a good healer also. Very interesting. Nice to hear, Minakshi ma'am.
Yeah. Anybody else? Any comments? Bhavna ma'am, Neha ma'am, Harmeet ma'am, anything you would like to sort of share with us what we've read, or any thoughts that may have come? Manisha ma'am, we'll stop here. Huh? This book is a little tougher than the
Yes.
earlier one. So I think you wanted to share the program earlier, but you may not have gone through it in any detail. If you want to do that.
The March calendar.
Yeah. If you want to do that or anything else, it's back to you.
I'll just share the calendar. Is my screen visible to all?
It's coming. Yeah.
Okay, in the first week of March, 2nd March is the first Sunday, so we'll be reading both the books. On 9th, we have Allegory, along with that book reading of the Door to Door Bookstore. 16th, we'll again read both the books, alongside 23rd as well. We have the Yes Workshop, Youth Engaging Society, where Miss Leena is going to inspire us and help us understand and navigate with our dreams and aspirations. For the Teachers Academy, it is mainly for the teachers. We are working on Fridays as well as on Saturdays. At AFA, that's the school DEI school which we have adopted, we are reading Is Your Child Ready to Face the World? And that is Hindi session. In case somebody wants to join us, you're most welcome. Just email it to me and I'll make necessary arrangements for you. That is point one. Secondly, Krista ma'am has started also in our DEI school with English communication skills, and that's aligned with what exactly is the need of that particular school. So there we have. As we all are aware about the book Show Me Thus, so that's going to happen on Saturdays. And my good school, there's another book, writer is Mr. Sandeep Dutt, as we all are aware of it. That book reading we are going to do on Fridays, along with Jampu Devi's school. So on Thursday, we have just started with the poetry sessions. All the students and teachers, you all are most welcome to join this session. We are planning for our Monday art sessions and Tuesday music sessions. Do let me know who all are interested so that the necessary arrangements can be done. Not last but not the least, we are having our at Atafoot Academy, we will be having a retreat starting from 11th to 14th of April. In case you all have not still registered, please do register and let me know so that I can make necessary arrangements for pick and drop facilities. Any questions from anyone?
No.
In case there's no question, with this, I end today's session. Thank you everyone for joining. Let's meet for the retreat or the next session, whatever is comfortable with you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye-bye. See you.